The Entertainment Technology Center at USC is producing a series of virtual coffee discussions. These discussions provide an opportunity for students and ETC member company executives to connect and discuss topics of mutual interest during this period of remote learning and social distancing. The September 23rd Executive Coffee was hosted by Verizon's Albert Lau. His topic: how will advances in network technology over the next 36 months impact the way we watch movies, play video games, and create and produce immersive and engaging experiences? Over 50 students applied to participate in the virtual coffee discussion, and 8 were invited and took part. Here are 22 minutes of highlights from the 70-minute discussion.
Individuals like yourselves are going to be really positioned to create what is the art of the possible for you. And that's what's unique about the position you're in, because there is no footprint, there is no framework that says, hey, I need to do this. Yeah, the thought here is that I wanted to play a video first, and then we can dive into some of the questions that I had prepared, and you guys can provide feedback and additional questions if necessary, and things of that sort. SC's security protocols are so strict, they didn't know where my DNS address was coming from, so they took me out.
And just like you've heard a lot about 5G, you may also have heard about something called edge computing. Multi-access edge computing, or MEC for short, takes the burden of computing power and related infrastructure off the consumer's device and out of the business's office, and puts it all in the cloud. But instead of that cloud server being hundreds or even thousands of miles away, MEC brings the computing power as close to the end user as possible, or as one might say, right to the edge of the network. The end result is that consumers and businesses get access to cutting-edge processing power without constantly having to upgrade systems, download applications, or invest in expensive equipment. And the close proximity at which the edge computing is being performed means the data has a shorter round trip, which makes for near instantaneous responses.
What could be done to improve post-pandemic movie theater experience?
So I come from the entertainment studios background. This is a conversation we've had for years. Studios want to pivot towards this streaming platform, but the hesitation was because of the relationship with exhibitors, so the AMCs of the world. I think Trolls were the reason why Disney even decided to release Mulan, in the current format. I think for me, some of the conversation I was having with my friends when Mulan was coming out on Disney Plus was, is it worth the $30 or not? Because this is the heaviest, the most expensive we've seen out of the PVOD space. Because Trolls, I believe, was $20 in comparison. But I think the difference is I don't have kids. So for me, I'm looking at it okay, if I'm spending $30, am I getting the same value that I would normally get in theater? But for somebody who has kids, they say, yes, absolutely. They were in on this. It was a much better value exchange for them. But I would say, I think as far as group attendance, there's Stranger Things has something coming next month where it's like a drive-in kind of theater vibe, if you will. I signed up for that. That's at $90, I believe, per ticket. So I was hesitant to spend $30 on Mulan, which I still did, but I didn't hesitate when the Stranger Things had a drive-in experience. So I think that drive-in experience is what got hooked me in the first place. I was willing to spend 3 times the amount of Mulan to do a drive-in experience as opposed to just watching it at home. So I think there is that consumer behavior shift as well, depending on what that value exchange is.
What's the value proposition of that? What are they offering?
I think it's coming in waves. I don't fully know. So I think that's part of the mystery. There's different, I think they have different tiers. Some of it includes, I think, popcorn, snacks, and drinks. But it's not so much them showing a new episode. I think it's more just about the experience of going into their land and the vibe of Stranger Things. I did get an email yesterday, about additional steps, but I don't fully even know. And I think that speaks to the fact that I don't fully even know exactly what the experience will be, but I bought in on $90. But that's probably also because of loyalty to the show. So I think there's I don't think every single IP can generate that kind of interest.
Yeah, adding on to that,
Ben, you're next.
I'm a film and television production undergrad, so I'm not as familiar with the business world of film, but trying to get more into it. But I guess my knee-jerk reaction kind of in a way is I feel like there's always going to be a demand to have a viewing experience in a public place, because I think even during quarantine, you had people like going on Netflix party, and it's always like a form of connection watching this content, which I think is really important. So I feel like there is going to be a huge shakeup in kind of the movie theater industry, where I think bigger movie theater companies like AMC, which is already struggling financially, will probably continue to struggle. But I think there'll be a rise of like smaller, more independent theaters where it's going to more like kind of inhabit like this community-based experience. But also at the same time, like I think streaming will become more of a price tag 100% with like movie premieres. I wouldn't be surprised if companies like Disney keep releasing like they have been with Mulan, because it seems like even though it has flopped so far, I think there's still going to be people who will pay that ticket to not go to a movie theater, especially in a post-pandemic world where people, especially like people in the older demographic, would probably be more hesitant to go to a public place.
Similar to that, and I did want to make sure to ask later what the role Verizon can play in terms of your Netflix parties or streaming with other people. In terms of the theatrical experience, I see this being not good, but one of the few survivors from this being an IMAX or your premium theater chain, in terms of now that theaters have kind of broken the ice on releasing movies straight to streaming or straight to PVOD, that you're going to need a much higher value proposition to be able to go to a theater and see it. So whether it's an IMAX where it's truly the best quality, or the theaters that kind of something like an Alamo Drafthouse that's kind of creating a larger experience outside of the movie. I think those are kind of the companies we're going to see being able to survive this. Just the movie theater where you pay $15 to sit on a rickety chair and watch a movie, I don't see those really surviving with this, and don't see theaters putting their non-blockbuster movies back into those theaters and paying those prices for it. So I think companies like an IMAX, an Alamo Drafthouse, the AMC theaters that have been able to evolve to provide a more premium experience will survive and kind of charge a premium price tag for that experience. But kind of the regular in the mall, there's a movie theater experience of it kind of going away.
So Albert cares about bandwidth and subscribers and things like that. Stranger Things is a multi-platform experience, right? It was on television, now they're putting something in a theater. Do you think that is an important driver, or can something like a Tenant earn its money back and capture an audience? Abba.
Go ahead, Abba. I was just going to say that I think Tenet was completely mishandled, just because, like, not because the numbers are so bad. I think they went with the model that, okay, we can just go back to business as usual. And I think a large part of that is based on Christopher Nolan's sort of like stubbornness about the theatrical experience. But I think there was an opportunity there to sort of rethink, sort of like do something like Quentin Tarantino did with The Hateful Eight a few years ago, which was very successful, The Roadshow. So bring that sort of thing back. And I think in terms of bandwidth and subscribers, I think there's an opportunity now with companies like Netflix and all the new streaming services that we're seeing to add some sort of social element into their platforms that can keep people engaged, sort of similar to what's that app that I have? There's an app that I have that I review every movie that I watch, and it would be really cool to see Netflix party-like features being integrated into the platforms, being integrated into televisions. Right now, it's only available really on Google Chrome, which is a hassle to download and set up, and it doesn't always work. So it would be really cool from a bandwidth standpoint for all these apps to have social integration within them.
So like 6 or 7 years ago, there was the two-screen experience where you would take your tablet into a theater and interact with somebody on the tablet while you're watching. Is that something that you're saying? Because you're talking about reviewing it. No?
Terrible idea. What I'm saying is, while you're watching on Netflix or on Disney Plus, if you can watch it with your family members who are socially distanced from you and interact with them in the sense that, like, you can chat with them live, maybe the movie pauses automatically when you say something to somebody, or some sort of like machine learning that and social integration that can make the TV home experience more of like a movie theater experience. Another failure to look at is what happened with Quibi, right? Like Quibi was meant for a world that it never got to debut in. So just to like take that
concept and just like flip it on its head of like, no, we really want to see long form content, but we want it to be social. Like months ago, I watched all of Game of Thrones for the first time before the season finale, and that experience, you know, people can do that kind of binge watching thing together. It doesn't have to be a lonely experience, and I think that will keep people more engaged. That'll keep people more in tune and want to go to, like right now I'm in film school, right, and I'm organizing screenings on Discord with my classmates. And I wish there was some way we could do that within Netflix, within any, you know, streaming platform, which would be easier. I think a lot of people are trying to do that.
Yeah, and I think just to add on to what Avo was saying, I'm glad you brought up Discord, because that's something that I'm now a lot more active on Discord than I ever was before. And especially depending on which audience and demo you're trying to hit. The Gen Z is very active on Discord. That is where their consumer behavior is, but also Twitch. If you talk about the engagement, how do you, so I think one of the reasons why Netflix Party was successful is kind of what Twitch is doing. It allows, there's a chat box, you know, where you can interact and you feel connected to who's streaming the content. So I think if, you know, not necessarily, I think just in general, how fans consume content these days, they expect it to be a microcosm of a society, if you will, where they're interacting with people who are watching and sharing the same content that they're interested in while engaging at the same time and interacting with one another. And I think a lot of that does come down to how fast is your internet speed. Because I remember, like, when I was at my parents' house, I tried to go on Twitch and I was like, what is going on? This is slow and it's laggy. And so I think the bandwidth is extremely important when you're streaming something live, and you also want that interaction to interact with the streamers or just your friends and family that's watching the same content as you.
As an electrical and computer engineer, I see gaming as a really big, like, huge just to where you can put your money. Making PCs is a really big thing amongst at least people around my kind of generation. And kind of, I know NVIDIA just released NVIDIA Reflex, which was going to reduce latency for competitive gaming. And watching that on stream and or Twitch, like streaming devices like Twitch and Discord, where you can stream to your friends, like that's just a really big area of interest, because you can have fun with your friends. So it's like, you don't have to be together, obviously. You could, I know you could set up in different school labs where my friends and I would just game together, but now I can still do it from home, but still talk to them and still have that kind of interaction. And I was just, that's about it.
And there are many Dreamscape immersive technologies that are out there. I just picked on them because they're the ones that I'm aware of based on our conversation. Those are the type of technology that's going to give us a chance to change the world and change the way our immersive experience is going to be like.
As Albert was saying, Dreamscape and Arizona State are partnered to develop educational programs in immersive technologies. How do you see that evolving? Do you think that AR and VR and immersive media in general, XR, whatever you want to call it, are going to go mainstream anytime soon?
As part of my executive MBA project, I actually reached out to a company called Spaces. I used to work with them at DreamWorks, and the heads of their VR are now, they were just like Dreamscape. They were, kind of a location-based entertainment. But once COVID hit, they transitioned to online education, and they were partnering with HP. I'm happy to make introductions. Sounds like they'll be already aware of who they are.
Oh, I know those guys.
Yeah, they're great. And Brad and Shaz. So I know that that's their vision, and I've seen a lot of the demos. I think the challenge is, how do we get the professors and the teachers to have access? Because as of right now, I think AR is a much easier barrier to entry because most people have smartphones. VR, the reality is if you don't have this headset, and I know Oculus just recently announced there's a much cheaper version, so that may change the landscape. I think it's more, how do we get access so that people can have these tools to be in this immersive virtual reality that many of the companies are trying to form.
I was just going to talk about how Facebook virtual realities, I did an internship for them, and one of the things was working on immersive technology using the VR headset, so the Oculus, and using, I can't say much since I did sign an NDA, but using haptic technology to make it a very immersive and personal experience. And that is gonna be very progressive once it actually is released. It's just the idea of, how is that affordable to students like me, who I don't have an Oculus headset, and I know it's a very expensive headset, but like making that affordable for everyone. And so, and for like teachers and campuses.
Do you think it needs to be the headset, or could it be on your phone as long as it's interactive?
I think the phone would work since everyone has a phone essentially by now. I think it's just, yeah, I think we could think about using it with the phone.
Yeah, I think with the phone, it's as a viewer, if I'm the student, that's totally fine. But I think as a teacher, there's probably different challenges. Like when I was at Warner Brothers, we created a game where we knew that not everybody it was a VR mobile game and not everybody had access to VR headsets. So we used the Google Cardboard and that's what we paired it with. So I think by pairing with something like that, it makes it much easier for everybody to have access.
Mm-hmm. Matt, you want to say something?
Yeah, I actually have the headset at home that is not the Oculus. It's very simple, and it's a device that you can put your smartphone in it, and then you can kind of simulate the VR experience. You don't have the controller. It's not a complete VR experience, but you can see like 360 videos and all.
I'm slightly more hesitant in thinking VR is going to take off. I want it to, but I think it's not going to happen until there's really a cheap VR headset. I think with Google Cardboard, it's been around for a few years at this point, and I've personally used it. I've used YouTube VR. I have the Samsung 360 camera to try and create more interactive content, and it still feels like that hasn't caught on, even though Google Cardboard is widely accessible. So I think it's going to take off. I think one of these companies that's in this space can get it to the masses, but I think until there's a cheap, maybe it comes with a phone, but a cheap headset that kind of does everything just by putting it on, not putting your phone into the cardboard that you have to assemble, I don't see it taking off until then.
And John?
Yeah.
Yeah. So say, if we're talking about education, even stepping back from the interactive questions that, have a lot to give in that respect. Just as far as sharing, I work in biomedical, and just as far as sharing that data over the network, there's a huge issue with all these people who are locked in their home and don't have access to these enormous machines that they typically use and pass it around. So there's a huge opportunity in the research space to be using 5G as a way to transfer increasingly complex data sets to home clients. So talking about actually delivering the content itself has a huge educational value as well.
Also adding on to that, I think what like VR needs, I think, is definitely an interface that I think is definitely supported by 5G that creates connection in a way. I don't think there has been like a software that's fully in a VR kind of space that's really gained that much traction. And I think if there is a software that is connected with the internet and also has a social networking component, but more inhabits like an AR space, I think that's when VR will start taking off, along with like the innovations of cheaper like materials and stuff like that to be connected to that sphere. Because I think like its uses could be super helpful in a variety of ways, whether it be having people communicate with people and having them almost inhabit the space, to definitely breakthroughs in fields such as like biomedical that I'm not as familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
I both like love, but also I'm scared of what you're saying, Albert, because at the same time, I'm wondering like when people buy up those spaces, right? When people buy up the bandwidth, or be it and partnerships happen, which is all exciting. It's exciting for business, but is that going to also like prevent some people from being heard as well? Like what is the stance that's being taken on that? And also like with what's all happening right now, I don't know if you guys have seen that new Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma. It's really, really insightful. Just like what do you see the future in terms of like just the openness of the internet? Is it going to stay as open as it has, or is it going to be somewhat limited?
No, it's not really a sense of the game has already been won. The consumers, the demand for internet needs to be as if it's water in your faucet, and that has to be there because of where life, our society needs it, our users need it. There are so many exposure that's happened now that pandemic is in play that families don't have the ability to connect and go to class because they don't have online capability. So those are issues that are real, and we cannot we have to give a subset of our capabilities to the community, local or otherwise. And so the internet needs to be there. The difference, Avo, is the latency requirements, is that there are going to be sensitive. It's one thing to provide an ability to be on Zoom, ability to stream, but we're talking about microsecond delays. That's the difference. You know, if you're a trader and you're no longer going to New York Stock Exchange and you're making that trade out of your couch or living room in Connecticut because you don't want to go to New York, that's a different type of connectivity. If I'm a film producer and I need to know what's going on when they're filming, because I'm not allowed to be there now because you only have a subset of folks that can be there, but I want to understand and see the content creation and the filming happening in real time. How do I do that? And so, you know, in the past they were landlines, and I don't know if you're around when Jim Cameron created Titanic, and they were in Baja California, right? I mean, how big was that pipe that they've created back to his home? And back then it was unheard of. But that's going to be how it's going to, the transformation that's happening I'm talking about, that's going to be private. That's going to cost a lot of money. But the community services, at least from a Verizon perspective, are very, very social responsibility and corporate responsibility firm. So we're going to continue to provide those allocations. LAUSD today is on Verizon. Every single kid that, and we're not charging much for it for the firm and for the city, I should say. It's about giving back.
Yeah, and on behalf of the ETC, I'd like to thank you all for giving us your time, and hope this was useful, and look for future emails on our next events. And thank you, Albert.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Albert.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.